Across the oceans and forests of the world, creatures of all shapes and sizes move, hide, and hunt. Some wear armor, some have only their skin. Some burrow through sand, others swim with incredible speed and precision. And yet, despite these differences, all of them began from the same simple blueprint. Molluscs are one of the most diverse animal groups on Earth. They are the second largest in terms of described species, with many more likely still waiting to be identified. Only the arthropods, spiders, insects, and crustaceans are more diverse. From their humble beginnings in ancient seas, molluscs have experimented with shape, shells, and behavior in ways few other animals ever have. In this video, we will follow their story. We will be exploring the branches of their family tree, from the earliest, simplest forms clinging to rocks to the dazzling complex cephalopods, the smartest invertebrates alive today. One body plan, complex experiments. This is the journey of the molluscs. If you'd like to learn more, check out the document in the description with research papers and image credits. Before we meet these remarkable animals, we need to start with the basics and ask what makes a mollusk a mollusk? At first glance, molluscs don't seem to have much in common. A chiton clinging to a rock, a snail crawling across a leaf, and an octopus hunting in open water look like entirely different kinds of animals. But beneath that diversity is a shared body plan, one that has been reshaped again and again over hundreds of millions of years. At its core, a mollusk is built around three main components. The first is a muscular foot, used for movement, anchoring, or digging. Traditionally, it forms a broad, creeping surface, but in some groups it has been heavily modified. Second is the mantle, a layer of tissue that surrounds the body and secretes the shell. In many molluscs, this shell is obvious. In others, it is reduced, internalized, or lost altogether, but in either case, the mantle itself remains. Third is the radula, a ribbon of tiny chitinous teeth used for feeding. It is one of the defining features of the group, adapted for scraping algae, drilling shells, or tearing flesh. Across this basic framework sits the organs and systems that complete the picture. A soft body housed within the mantle, a reduced body cavity, paired nerve cords, and in most cases a distinct head. Beyond these core features, most molluscs also share broadly similar systems for circulation and respiration. Patterns that will remain familiar until, in a few lineages, they don't. Importantly, this is not a rigid design. The mollusk body plan is best thought of as a set of parts, rather than a fixed form. Over time, evolution has stretched, shrunk, fused, duplicated, and even discarded these parts, producing everything from worm-like burrowers to some of the most intelligent invertebrates on the planet. The foot, mantle, and radula are ancestral features, but in modern molluscs, many groups have lost or radically modified one or more of them. Bivalves no longer have a radula. Slugs have internalized their shell, and in one particularly strange lineage, the Aplacophora, the familiar mollusk features have been reduced almost beyond recognition. It is this flexibility, more than any single feature, that has driven the astonishing diversity of molluscs we see today. Now that we understand the basic body plan of molluscs, we can start asking how that plan changes across the group. But let's be clear here, Mollusca is a vast phylum, the largest in the marine ecosystem. This isn't a tour of every family. Instead, we'll focus on the major lineages that share similar solutions. And just as importantly, the points where those solutions begin to diverge. With that in mind, we begin with Polyplacophora, better known as the chitons. Chitons are often described as living reminders of what early molluscs may have looked like. They are low-profile animals, clinging tightly to rocks in the intertidal zone, where waves and predators leave little room for error. Their bodies follow the mollusk blueprint closely. A broad, muscular foot anchors them to the substrate. A thick mantle surrounds the body, secreting not one shell, but 8 overlapping plates, a design that provides protection while still allowing flexibility. Beneath those plates sits a powerful radula, armed with some of the hardest biological materials ever known. In many species, the teeth on the radula are reinforced with iron minerals, allowing chitons to scrape algae directly from bare rock. Unlike many later molluscs, chitons have changed relatively little in overall form. They do not twist their bodies, lose their shells, or abandon the sea floor. Instead, they represent a conservative solution, one that has proven remarkably effective for hundreds of millions of years. For that reason, chitons are often treated as a useful reference point, a baseline if you prefer, showing us what molluscs look like when the ancestral parts are still present, still functional, and still arranged in a familiar way. From here, the mollusk family tree begins to experiment, sometimes subtly and sometimes dramatically. If chitons show us what a mollusk looks like when the ancestral parts are preserved, the Aplacophorans show us what happens when evolution experiments with those same parts in extreme ways. And the most interesting part? These radically different groups are still each other's closest living relatives. Two very different paths branching from the same point on the mollusk family tree. Aplacophorans are small, worm-like mollusks that lack a true shell, have reduced or transformed the foot, and in some groups have even simplified or lost the radula. Instead of a shell, their bodies are covered in tiny calcareous spicules, giving them a smooth or bristly appearance. Traditionally, Aplacophorans have been divided into two groups, the Selenogastres and Cordofoveata. Because both share a shellless, spicule-covered mantle, they were long grouped together as a single class. More recent phylogenetic studies, however, have questioned this arrangement, with some researchers arguing that these two lineages may each represent their own distinct class. Selenogastres are predators, feeding on soft-bodied animals such as jellyfish, corals, and comb jellies. Around 20% of species have secondarily lost the radula, and even when it is retained, it is not used in the typical scraping or tearing roles seen in other mollusks. Cordofoveata, by contrast, are specialist burrowers, feeding on detritus and microorganisms within the sediment. Most species are small, often just a few centimeters. Unlike most other mollusks, they have completely lost the foot. Taken together, Aplacophorans give us an early and striking example of molluscan diversity. Within this lineage we find both free-living predators and burrowing detritivores. And when we zoom back out to the wider tree, their closest relatives are the heavily armoured, highly conservative chitons. This contrast shows us just how flexible the mollusk blueprint can be, preserved with minimal change or reshaped almost beyond recognition, with both strategies proving successful over hundreds of millions of years. From the clade with the chitons and Aplacophorans, we can now move across to the other major branch of the mollusk family tree. Here we find the group often referred to as the Conchifera, an extraordinarily diverse assemblage of shelled mollusks. But we'll begin with a relatively conservative lineage, one that has changed little over time, the Monoplacophora. For a long time, the Monoplacophorans were only known from fossils. The oldest of these dated all the way back to the Cambrian period, making them one of the oldest lineages still represented by living species today. For decades, they were assumed to have gone extinct around 375 million years ago. Then, in the 1950s, like the coelacanth before them, living Monoplacophorans were discovered in the deep ocean. Fossils once thought to offer only a glimpse into the distant origins of mollusks suddenly took on new life. At first glance, Monoplacophorans resemble limpets, a single, low shell covering a soft body underneath. Internally, however, they reveal something unexpected. Many of their organs, including muscles, nerves, kidneys, and gills, are repeated in serial pairs along the length of the body. This kind of repetition, known as serial organization, is rare in modern mollusks and was once thought to be a primitive feature linking mollusks to segmented animals. Today, Monoplacophorans are best understood not as direct ancestors of other mollusks, but as a lineage that has retained several ancient features while evolving alongside the rest of the group. All living species are found in deep-sea environments, where stable conditions may have allowed this conservative body plan to persist for hundreds of millions of years. In the context of the mollusk family tree, Monoplacophorans sit at an important crossroads. They retain a single shell, like the shelled mollusks that follow, but also preserve hints of an earlier, more modular body organization. From this point onward, we begin to see the rise of the modern shelled lineages, bivalves, gastropods, and cephalopods, each taking the mollusk blueprint in increasingly specialized directions. After the conservative Monoplacophorans, the next branch of the mollusk family tree marks one of the most dramatic transformations the group has ever undergone. Cephalopoda, the squids, octopuses, cuttlefish, and Nautiluses, have taken the same basic mollusk body plan and pushed it to its limits. At first glance, Cephalopods seem almost unrecognizable as mollusks, but the familiar components remain, radically reworked. The muscular foot has split and reshaped into a ring of arms and tentacles surrounding the mouth. At the same time, part of that foot has been transformed into a powerful funnel used for jet propulsion, one of the most efficient forms of locomotion in the water. The mantle too has taken on a new role. In cephalopods, it has become a muscular engine, driving respiration and movement by drawing in water and expelling it forcefully. Even the way they feed has been completely redesigned. Cephalopods retain a radula, but it is no longer used for scraping or grazing. Instead, it works in combination with a hard, parrot-like beak, a structure unique among mollusks, capable of slicing through flesh, shells, and even bone. Internally, cephalopods are equally unique. Unlike most mollusks, they have a closed circulatory system, delivering oxygen rapidly to support fast, sustained movement. Their nervous systems are the most complex of any invertebrate, enabling learning, problem-solving, tool use, and visual communication through rapid color changes. Taken together, cephalopods represent a complete reimagining of the mollusk body plan, not by abandoning it, but by refining and amplifying its components. From this foundation, several distinct lineages emerge. The most basal living cephalopods are the Nautiluses, in the family Nautilidae. Nautiluses retain an external, chambered shell, simple eyes, numerous short tentacles without suckers, and a slow, buoyant lifestyle. I have explored Nautiluses in much more detail in a dedicated video, which I've linked in the description for anyone interested. Nautiluses are only a small remnant of what was once a vast and diverse shelled cephalopod assemblage. For much of the Paleozoic and Mesozoic eras, the oceans were dominated by groups such as ammonites and belemnites, cephalopods with shells that left behind an extraordinary fossil record. Ammonites in particular evolved rapidly and in enormous numbers, making them some of the most important index fossils in geology and paleontology. Excluding Nautiluses, all living cephalopods belong to the coleoids, cephalopods in which the shell has been reduced, internalized, or lost entirely. This shift allowed for greater flexibility, speed, and ecological range. Coleoids are split into two main lineages: the Decapodiforms, including Cuttlefish and Squid, and the Octopodoforms, including Octopuses and the vampire squid. The two groups are easy enough to distinguish based on their number of limbs. Octopodoforms have 8 arms, while Decapodiforms have 10 limbs, still only 8 arms, but they additionally have 2 longer specialized tentacles. Octopuses, in the order Octopoda, take shell reduction to the extreme. The shell has disappeared entirely. Their soft bodies allow them to squeeze through impossibly small spaces. They rely heavily on intelligence and dexterity, using their arms independently to manipulate objects, open shells, and explore their environment. In this lineage, behavioral complexity has largely replaced physical protection. The vampire squid, Vampiroteuthis infernalis, is a deep-sea dweller, but is highly distinctive with thin skin connecting its arms, along with bioluminescence, a unique metabolism, and feeding on detritus. While only one species is around today, extinct relatives are known from the fossil record. Within the Decapodiforms, cuttlefish retain a highly modified internal shell called the cuttlebone. This structure provides fine control over buoyancy, allowing cuttlefish to hover precisely in the water column. They are masters of camouflage, rapidly changing color and skin texture to blend into their surroundings or communicate. Squid, spread across several families, have reduced their internal shell to a thin, flexible structure called the pen. Built for speed, many species form large coordinated schools in open water. There are various lineages. Pygmy, bobtail, pelagic, and pencil squids are the most common, but there are others. These are highly diverse groups, ranging from the tiny pygmy squids to the giant and colossal squids that likely gave rise to the legend of the kraken. Cephalopods show just how far the mollusk body plan can be pushed towards speed, intelligence, and active predation. But they are only one outcome to molluscan evolution. Next, we turn to a group that followed a very different path, retaining a shell, embracing slower movement, and diversifying into more forms than any other mollusk lineage, the gastropods. If cephalopods show what happens when the mollusk body plan is pushed towards speed and intelligence, gastropods show what happens when that same blueprint is refined, twisted, and diversified. Gastropods are the largest and most diverse class of mollusks. They include snails, slugs, limpets, abalones, and sea hares, occupying nearly every environment, from deep oceans and coral reefs to freshwater rivers, forests, deserts, and alpine grassland. No other mollusk group has made such a complete transition between marine, freshwater, and terrestrial life. At first glance, gastropods appear simple, a soft body protected by a single shell, moving slowly on a broad muscular foot. But beneath that familiar form lies one of the most dramatic anatomical reorganizations in the entire animal kingdom. Early in development, the body undergoes torsion, a process where the visceral mass rotates, twisting the internal organs and repositioning the mantle cavity, gills, and anus towards the front of the body, above the head. This rearrangement defines gastropods and sets them apart from all other mollusks. Torsion has long puzzled biologists, but it likely offered early gastropods a defensive advantage. By bringing their head and sensory organs closer to the shell opening, gastropods could withdraw more effectively when threatened. Over time, this reorganization became the foundation on which the group diversified. Most gastropods also evolved a coiled shell, further compacting the body and improving protection. Some lineages flattened, reduced, or lost a shell entirely. Slugs, for example, are terrestrial gastropods that have secondarily reduced and internalized their shells, a recurring evolutionary theme. In gastropods, the radula is central to how they interact with their environment. In herbivorous snails, it scrapes algae and plant material. In predatory lineages, it becomes a drilling, tearing, or venom-delivering tool. Some marine gastropods, such as cone snails, have taken this to an extreme, transforming the radula into a harpoon-like structure, capable of injecting powerful toxins. Gastropods are commonly divided into several major lineages, but rather than listing them all, it is more useful to think in terms of repeated evolutionary experiments. Limpet-like forms have evolved multiple times, adapting to life clinging to rocks in high-energy environments. Sea slugs have abandoned shells entirely, relying instead on chemical defenses, camouflage, and warning colors. Terrestrial snails have modified the mantle cavity into a lung, allowing them to breathe air and colonize land. What unites all of these forms is not a single lifestyle or body shape, but flexibility. Gastropods show how a relatively conservative mollusk design, a foot, a mantle, a shell, a radula, can be endlessly reworked without abandoning its core structure. In the mollusk family tree, gastropods represent diversification through variation, rather than reinvention. They did not discard the shell as cephalopods did, nor preserve ancient forms unchanged. Instead, they explored nearly every ecological niche available, becoming one of the most successful animal groups on Earth. Before moving on, let us take a quick look at two of the most remarkable adaptations: repeated shell loss and the move from the ocean to land. For shell loss, let's use Nudibranchs as an example, a group of marine sea slugs best known for their vivid colors and elaborate body forms. Nudibranchs begin life with a shell, like other gastropods, but lose it entirely as they develop. Without physical protection, many rely on storing toxins from the animals they eat. Others produce their own chemical deterrents or use bright warning colors to advertise that they are dangerous or unpalatable. Respiration in nudibranchs is also externalized. Instead of gills hidden within a mantle cavity, many species breathe through exposed structures on their backs, an arrangement that gives the group its name, meaning naked gills. These delicate forms would be impossible if they still had a shell. Nudibranchs show that losing the shell is not a step backwards, but an alternative solution. Within gastropods, shell reduction and loss has evolved multiple times, each time opening the door to new lifestyles, body shapes, and ecological roles. Perhaps the most important transition in gastropod evolution is one that no other mollusk group has truly achieved: life on land. Multiple gastropod lineages independently moved out of the oceans and into freshwater, and from there onto land. In doing so, they solved a set of challenges that few invertebrates outside of arthropods have ever overcome. Gills were replaced by a lung formed from the mantle cavity, allowing gas exchange in air. Behavior and physiology shifted to reduce water loss, with many land snails becoming nocturnal or retreating into their shells during dry conditions. The shell itself, often seen as a burden, became a critical survival tool. It acts as a mobile shelter, reducing dehydration and protecting the animal when conditions become hostile. Some species can seal themselves inside with a temporary barrier, waiting out droughts or cold periods. Today, terrestrial gastropods are found on every continent except Antarctica, occupying forests, grasslands, deserts, and urban environments. In making this transition, gastropods became the only molluscs to truly conquer land, a feat that required not speed or intelligence, but patience, protection, and flexibility. If gastropods diversified through mobility and flexibility, bivalves took a very different path. They simplified. Bivalves include clams, mussels, oysters, scallops, and their relatives. At first glance, they seem almost un-mollusc-like. The head is reduced or absent, the radula is completely lost, and the body is enclosed within two hinged shells. And yet, this stripped-back design has made bivalves one of the most successful and ecologically important animal groups in the oceans. The defining feature of bivalves is their shell, split into two valves connected by a hinge and powerful closing muscles. This shell provides protection, but it also allows the animal to seal itself off from the environment, an important adaptation for life in unstable sediment-rich or tidal habitats. In losing the radula and most of the head, bivalves shifted their entire feeding strategy. They have become filter feeders, drawing water into the mantle cavity, passing it over the gills, and expelling it again. These gills are not just for respiration, they also trap microscopic food particles, plankton, algae, and organic debris, and transport them to the mouth. This allows bivalves to feed continuously, processing enormous volumes of water relative to their body size. Despite being sedentary, bivalves are not all the same. Many clams burrow into sand or mud using a muscular foot, anchoring themselves beneath the surface. Mussels attach to rocks using strong protein fibers, forming dense beds in high-energy coastal environments. Scallops, unusually for bivalves, can swim by rapidly clapping their shells together, jetting themselves away from predators. Bivalves have also made repeated transitions between marine and freshwater environments. Rivers and lakes around the world host diverse lineages of freshwater mussels and clams, some with complex life cycles that temporarily involve parasitizing fish as larvae. This strategy allows them to disperse upstream, a remarkable solution for an otherwise immobile animal. Ecologically, bivalves play an outsized role. By filtering water, they can dramatically alter nutrient cycles, water clarity, and ecosystem structure. Entire habitats, such as oyster reefs and mussel beds, are built by bivalves and support countless other species. In the mollusk family tree, bivalves represent a different kind of success. Rather than increasing speed, intelligence, or behavioral complexity, they doubled down on protection, efficiency, and scale. By letting the environment bring food to them, bivalves turned simplicity into dominance. There is one last lineage to explore in our journey of the mollusk tree of life. Cephalopoda is one of the smallest and least familiar classes of mollusks, but they offer yet another way the mollusk body plan can be rearranged. Often called tusk shells, cephalopods are named for their long, curved tubular shells, open at both ends. These shells resemble miniature ivory tusks, and they house a slender body adapted for life buried head down in soft sediment. Tusk shells are predators, feeding primarily on microscopic organisms such as foraminiferans. To capture this prey, they use a unique structure called the captacula, long, sticky, thread-like appendages that extend from the mouth. These are used to probe through sediment, snagging individual food particles and transporting them back to the radula. The foot in tusk shells is narrow and conical, specialized for digging rather than crawling. It allows the animal to anchor itself within the substrate, with the wider end of the shell protruding above the sediment surface. This opening allows water to circulate through the mantle cavity for respiration. They lack gills entirely. Instead, gas exchange occurs directly across the mantle surface. A simple solution that works well in their low-energy, sediment-dwelling lifestyle. Like bivalves, they have no obvious head or complex sensory organs, reflecting their highly specialized ecological niche. Today, tusk shells are exclusively marine and are most common in deeper waters, though some species occur on continental shelves. They are not particularly diverse compared to gastropods or bivalves, but they have persisted for hundreds of millions of years with remarkably little change. In the broader context of mollusk evolution, cephalopods represent neither a step toward complexity nor a return to simplicity. Instead, they are a reminder that success can come from extreme specialization, carving out a narrow niche and occupying it effectively over geological time. From worm-like burrowers to jet-propelled predators, from armoured grazers to animals that think, learn and problem-solve, molluscs show just how much evolutionary range can be built from a single body plan. At their core, molluscs share the same fundamental components: a foot, a mantle, and a soft body organized around them. But over hundreds of millions of years, evolution has treated those parts not as fixed rules, but as raw material. Shells were reinforced, flattened, internalized, or lost entirely. Feet became digging tools, creeping soles, grasping arms, or disappeared altogether. Feeding structures were refined into scrapers, drills, harpoons, or abandoned in favor of filter feeding. Some lineages, like Chitons and Monoplacophorans, retained forms that echo the earliest chapters of mollusk evolution. Others, like Gastropods and Bivalves, diversified explosively by refining protection, efficiency, and ecological flexibility. And in cephalopods, the same blueprint was pushed to its limits, trading armor for speed, strength, and intelligence. What makes molluscs remarkable is not just their diversity, but the fact that there is no single successful solution. Slow and fast, simple and complex, armored and naked, all of these strategies have persisted, often side by side, for immense spans of geological time. In that sense, molluscs are not defined by shells, tentacles, or teeth. They are defined by possibility, by what can happen when evolution is given a flexible design, enough time, and the freedom to experiment. And that is the journey of the molluscs. I hope you enjoyed this journey into the mollusk family tree. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't let it stop here. Share it, talk about it, and keep learning. There's still so much to discover about the world's rare and remarkable species. And the more we understand, the better our chances of protecting them. Thanks for watching.